I'm Sarina Fazan, taking a risk, making a difference, and changing the course of your life. Remarkable stories from people defying the odds. You're listening to On the Record.
Hi, everyone. It's Sarina Fazan here, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode of On the Record. This is a deeply personal one for me because I am so excited to introduce my executive producer, Audra Butler. Hi, Audra.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It's so weird being behind the camera, on this side of the camera, and not the side that I usually sit on.
And I have to say, Audra is so humble, so modest. I said, Audra, we need to put your byline on so many of these amazing articles she writes. And she's like, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. But, give our interns the byline. Yeah. But she is the backbone
thank you.
Of SFM, of Sarina Fazan Media. And I have to share, too. Just the other day, I had her approve a script, and I literally started crying, hyperventilating, crying.
Yeah.
But Audra is joining us today because she is so amazing, but your number one job is being a mother.
Absolutely.
And right now, of course, you have two adorable children, 10-year-old Lucy and 7-year-old Will.
Yes.
But you also had another son.
Andy would have been 12. He would have been 12 in 2021. And I'm so happy to be here to share Andy's story with you and your podcast listeners, because as much as I love being a parent to my kids that are thriving and living, being part of his legacy is very important to me, and sharing his story.
And Audra, and I know you've shared his story quite a bit, but for you to be able to sit here today and talk about it, I know your son was diagnosed with SMA.
Yes, spinal muscular atrophy. And it was a total surprise to us. So he was our firstborn. We were actually just thrilled to be having a baby. We'd been trying for about 5 years before we found out that we were pregnant with him. So my husband and I were absolutely thrilled to finally be parents, and everything went pretty well. While I was pregnant with him, he was born on January 8th, 2009, and he was pronounced a healthy baby at that point. 8-9 on the APGAR. He was pink. He was moving. He was great. But shortly after he was born, there started to be little signs that weren't quite right. His swallow. He was having problems with his swallow. Having problems with moving a little bit. But we thought, he was big. He was 9 pounds, 14 ounces at birth. So he's just a big guy. He'll developmentally catch up. He's fine. And the pediatrician pretty much said the same. But between his 4-week baby checkup and 7 weeks, things started to really change for the worse for him. And at that time, newborn screening in Florida checked for cystic fibrosis, which it still does. And he came back as a baby that potentially could have cystic fibrosis. So we took him, terrified, to the pulmonologist. And while we were there, they were like, well, he doesn't have cystic fibrosis, but he's not moving the way that he needs to move.
Oh, my goodness.
And here we thought, he's just a lazy baby, right? Well, suddenly that wasn't what was happening anymore. So they told us to go to our pediatrician, and unfortunately, it was already after hours. Our pediatrician wasn't there. We saw someone new who sent us directly to the pediatric intensive care unit of the closest hospital, saying that, something is terribly wrong. So we went from that morning having what we thought was a healthy baby boy to now having a child potentially in respiratory distress in the ICU.
I cannot even imagine as a parent what you were going through.
It was awful. And at that moment, the doctor was saying words to us, right?
Right.
And I had no recollection of what the words meant. I was just, how can Andy be sick? This is the baby that we dreamt about. This is the answer to our prayers. This, is our perfect little boy. How can this be happening? He was okay yesterday. How is he not okay today? But there just were a lot of signs that as a first-time parent, we didn't know to look for. And at the time, almost 12 years ago, people weren't talking about spinal muscular atrophy, I think the same way that they're talking about it today.
And, and honestly, I want to get to that, but it's thanks to you. You are instrumental in one of the reasons why people are talking about SMA so much more now. But back to that, and I know it was just such a horrible time.
Yeah.
When did you guys finally hear that it was SMA. And at that point, were you like, what is this?
Yeah, well, initially the doctors in the pediatric ICU said to us, just stay off Google. Just stay off Google. There could be a number of things that could be wrong. Just don't look up anything. So of course, we initially go to Google, first thing.
Of course, the first thing we do.
Right. And spinal muscular atrophy was one of the things that came up, but we kept thinking, it couldn't be this. Again, you don't go from a healthy baby to one that has a terminal illness. Your mind doesn't go there. So we went home from his first hospital stay without a diagnosis, but he had the blood test done for spinal muscular atrophy. And just a few days later, he started having respiratory issues again. So we took him to All Children's in St. Petersburg because we've heard great things, obviously, at that point about that particular hospital. And while we were there, the diagnosis came in. And the unfortunate thing that happened was that the attending was relatively young. And I don't think he'd ever dealt with this kind of diagnosis before. So he came into our room, and it was St. Patrick's Day. My husband is Irish. St. Patrick's Day was going to be a huge day of celebration for us. But here we are, sitting in this room in All Children's Hospital with our baby that we don't know what's wrong. And the attending comes in and says, so we got the test results back. And it's spinal muscular atrophy. But I know kids with spinal muscular atrophy. They're in wheelchairs. They don't move as well, but they're happy and they're healthy and they're smart and there's hope. And we thought, okay, well, we're still upset, but okay, there's hope. That's all we need. We just need hope that we're not going to lose our baby. And then he leaves the room and he comes back just a few minutes later and says, I misread the test results. He doesn't have the kind of SMA where there's quality of life. He has type 1 SMA. It's the most severe type. And babies born with type 1 SMA at that time, the statistics were dire. He probably won't live to see the age of 2. And so he gave us, instead of hope, we got a prognosis of 6 to 9 months and a prescription to contact hospice.
Oh my gosh.
So we left the hospital with our baby, who at the time was 9 weeks old, not knowing if we would see the next week with him. So we started really celebrating every moment that we had with Andy. So Andrew Glenn Butler is his name. January 8th was when he was born. And starting on his 9th week, we celebrated monthly birthdays. We had full parties with cake, the whole full thing, presents. He was an absolutely incredible baby. At the time with SMA, there was no treatment, there was no cure. Take them home and love them was what most doctors were saying to parents like us. And we decided that we would find hope wherever we could. And for us, it lived in Andy's eyes, and it lived in Andy's smile. And as long as he was smiling, then we knew that we were doing the right thing. And so that's what we did. We got him into physical therapy. We got him into occupational therapy. We went to speech therapy for a baby with feeding issues. That's what you do. We did everything that we could think of. We saw the neurologist, the pulmonologist, had a whole array of a medical team behind him to try to give him the best shot at life that we possibly could. The problem lies in the disease. So spinal muscular atrophy is very much like Lou Gehrig's disease for adults. So, it starts with muscular weakness and then it ends in full paralysis.
So at this time, were you still holding on to hope, or did you know deep down in your heart that it truly was a matter of time?
I think for me, I'm more of a realist. So my husband definitely was looking for a miracle. My husband was hoping that, anything could come and save him. But I was watching. I was there all the time with him. I left my job. Honestly, I'd only been back to for a day before all of this happened. So I'd left my job to be Andy's full-time caregiver. So I was home with him and watching. And I was home with the hospice nurses who came to visit with us too, seeing that, every time it was getting a little bit worse and he was losing every day a little bit more ability. And that was the thing, that there was no treatment, there was no drug, there was nothing that we could do to stop it. We just kind of had to wait and see how long it would be before the disease took him. And, we hoped certainly that we had more time. But as it turned out, we didn't. So he was 5 months old when we lost him to the disease. And he was back at All Children's. He had an episode where he choked on formula. At this point, he had a G tube, so he was being fed through his stomach. But any little swallow caused him to have like a mini aspiration.
Bless his heart.
And he eventually developed pneumonia, which led to lung failure, which is how we lost him. But, he fought until the end. And what we said the whole way through was that as long as he was smiling, right, that we knew that that's what we needed to do. And at the end, he lost his smile. Oh. And so for us, that was just when we needed to say, okay, if this isn't the life that you want, then we can't extend it for you. Because at that time, really all you could do was extend their lives through machines.
Right.
But this is a baby at this point who would have grown up connected to machines without the ability to speak, without the ability to swallow.
Function on his own at all.
He wouldn't be able to move anything. At that point, I had lost all movement. So you can't turn over in bed. You can't scratch your nose when it itches. But the thing about kids with SMA, and certainly about Andy, is that they are cognitively hyper aware.
Wow.
Super smart. I mean, like this kid, a baby, was amazingly smart. We have a picture of my dad, or a video of my dad in the hospital when Andy was only 12 weeks old, kind of going like this and saying to him, and Andy had a little ring in his hand. My dad was saying, "Give me the ring, Andy, give me the ring." And Andy was struggling and moving his little arm up so he could give his grandpa that ring. Now, I've got 2 healthy kids after, right?
Right.
For both of them at 12 weeks, I stood over them going,
Give me the
"Give
ring.
me the ring. Give me the ring." And both of them looked at me like, "Lady, I don't even know who you are. I'm a baby." But Andy was he was so aware. And if you had a conversation, if you were holding him and people were talking around him, he couldn't move his head, but his eyes would track every single person. He was just hyper aware. And for us, we needed him to have the quality of life that he deserved. I mean, if it was up to me, really, I want him around now. I can't imagine life without him. I mean, I'm living it, but I never wanted to imagine life without him. And I would have made the decision to keep him with me selfishly. Mm-hmm. But really, we had to instead focus on him because it's his life.
Well, what you have done in memory of his life, though, is amazing and provided so much hope to so many families. So I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about that because, and I think we'll go to a quick break and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you. And I'm choked. I'm so sorry. I'm choked up. I can't even get the words out because you're my hero, right? You are my hero. And yeah, so I Audra, I really can't even imagine what you've gone through, but
it's the unimaginable. I mean, it's, as a mother, it's nothing you expect and nothing you prepare for, but this is the hand that we were dealt. So we had to figure out the best way to move his legacy forward and to move our lives forward.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about how much hope you're giving to other families right now.
This podcast is brought to you by Autism Shifts.
Kind of used to seeing autism through, the lens of its challenges, everything that's hard about it. And what we've been able to do through our program, and me as a mom, I've been able to shift that perspective and start looking at the whole diagnosis differently. And when I do, I can see the capabilities, I can see the possibilities for our community. And really, that's the opportunity we have, is to help people within our community see that.
For more information, visit autismshifts.org.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm talking to Audra Butler, who's actually my executive producer here at SFM, but is her most important job, of course, is a mother, being a mom. And we're talking about the son that she lost.
Yes.
Beautiful Andy.
Beautiful Andy.
So Andy was 5 months old when you lost him.
Yep.
And during the time he was alive, I know all your focus was on him.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
And creating the best life
Yes.
possible. And he lost his life because of
Spinal muscular atrophy.
So then, Audra, I can't even, again, imagine trying to pick yourself up after losing a child. And as you said, you and your husband, Alan, had tried to get pregnant for 5 years. So
Yep.
this was your dream baby, your, your dream come true.
He absolutely was.
So how did you pick yourself up and then fight for SMA? Because what you have accomplished right now in the state of Florida, every
newborn is tested for SMA now. It started this spring, and I was part of the effort to make sure that happened. And it's one of my proudest achievements in life. Beyond the 3 kids, beyond getting married, making sure that there's early detection for SMA is one of the highlights of my life.
So talk to us about that. Like, how did you get to that point, and what drove you? I mean, clearly it was, little Andy.
Oh, absolutely, it was Andy. I made him a promise before he died that I would keep fighting. And so I did. And for a while, you ask, how do you pick yourself up? I didn't for a while. There were months when he was born on a Thursday, he died on a Thursday. I didn't get out of bed on Thursdays. I didn't know how to be a parent without a child. I was his mommy, and then I wasn't anymore. He was gone. So how do you get out of bed? How do you put on clothes? How do you go to the grocery store? I just couldn't. It didn't make sense to me. How do I live if he's not here? And so what I thought was that I needed to do something to advocate for treatment, to advocate for a cure, and at the very least, beyond all of that, to advocate for other families so they wouldn't be blindsided the way that I was. So I started making phone calls, and I started going to different OBGYN groups and talking to them about allowing testing for parents. Because at the time when I was pregnant with him, I said that I wanted all of the tests. But SMA wasn't offered at that time unless you asked for it by name. And I didn't know.
Who would know?
I
Really,
didn't know to
right?
ask for it. So that was kind of the advocacy that I started with. And I also became involved with an organization that was then known as Families of SMA, that is now known as Cure SMA, eventually being their chapter president for the greater Florida area, which at that point was from Pensacola to Sarasota. And I called reporters. I wrote articles. We had a group, Florida Crossroads, did a show on Andy in 2009 called Andy's Army, just about our story and trying to get that awareness out there. So that's where I kind of started putting all of my focus on spreading the word. Like, this is what this disease is. These are the warning signs, and this is what to look for in your child, and even before that when you're pregnant. Just so people would know, because I hated the idea of them being blindsided by
the way you guys
the way
were.
that we were.
So with SMA, is it something that you can prevent, or is this hereditary? If you could just talk to us about.
Sure. Yeah, it's a hereditary disease. So the parents have to be carriers of it. And there's a gene, it's called SMN1, and it's a faulty gene. People with SMA you have to have SMN1 to not have SMA. You should say it that way. If you have the faulty gene, which is the absence of SMN1, then you have SMA. So no SMN1, you have SMA is kind of the easy way to look at it. I'm a carrier of the disease, so I have 1 copy of SMN1 and 1 faulty gene. And that gene, the faulty gene, was passed on to Andy. And the same with my husband. Initially, when he was screened for the disease, we thought he wasn't a carrier at all. He has 2 healthy copies of SMN1. And there was then some hope that maybe it was a de novo mutation, which means that the mutation of the gene happened upon the point of conception, which would have meant that any other baby would have a very low expectation of having SMA. But then we did some additional studies with the University of Pennsylvania. It's called a linkage study, and found that Alan actually was a hidden carrier. So he has 2 copies of the healthy gene on one genome and the mutated copy on the other.
So for parents who are carriers, and now with the screening, how does it give parents a forewarning, or is there anything that you can do to prevent?
No, it's faulty genes. It's the luck of the draw. And all of us, what I've learned, since Andy's diagnosis is that all of us have like 12 faulty genes, somewhere around there. All of us have it. And it's just that how they combine. And so it's a crapshoot. It's green eyes, right? Brown hair. You have the gene that causes SMA or you don't. So with us, now that we know that both of us are carriers, we also knew that moving forward into having more children, that there'd be a 25% chance that any pregnancy would be SMA affected. So we took the chance. My husband said to me, if we were in Vegas and you had 75% odds that you were going to win a jackpot, would you play?
Right.
And
Yes.
I was like, but the other 25% is horrific. I mean, the other 25% is terrifying. And he was like, well, we're going to have faith that it'll be okay. And for us, thank God it was. So Lucy was born 18 months after Andy. She's perfectly healthy. And Will was born in 2013.
And we're so happy for you that you have Lucy and Will. So,
Yeah.
But as a mom,
Yeah.
and especially with, what happened with Andy, do you find that you can be so overprotective of them?
I'm crazy overprotective. I don't think I let Lucy get onto a swing at a playground until she was 9 months old. And even then, she was totally in the baby swing with, 9,000 different restraints on her. Because when you're a parent and the other shoe has dropped, then I see danger everywhere. Why wouldn't another shoe drop? And for Lucy specifically, when she was 4 months old, she was rushed to the same pediatric ICU. Well, she wasn't the ICU, but the same pediatric hospital as Andy was when he was very, very first ill, in the same car seat, in the same car, because she had this crazy high 106-degree fever.
Oh my goodness.
We were just, she was not really responsive. I mean, we rushed her to the hospital. They think potentially she had, some kind of viral infection. They weren't sure. Had a spinal tap at 4 months old. I mean, and we were there reliving our worst nightmare. And all I could think of was, now we're going to lose our second child. We're going to lose the second one. We're going to lose the second one a different way, but at the same place. And, thankfully it wasn't. It was a urinary tract infection.
But to have a 106-degree fever and everything, oh my gosh.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. So now, even today, they cough and I'm like, call the pediatrician. It's, something terrible is happening. And they've had to show me, just the same way that Andy led me with his smile, they lead me with their strength. Oh. So they've taught me that, Mom, it's going to be okay. We're okay. And I have to trust in them the same way that I trusted in him. So, they really have been a huge part in allowing me to heal. And they've been some of the reason that I've been allowed to help others heal, because now I can tell a story that goes from, losing everything to finding hope and finding how you can live again, even after that kind of loss.
So, but Audra, what, because I sadly too have covered many, many stories where someone does lose a child, which is again, your worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So what words of advice would you have to someone out there that is dealing with this? Because that story, what you just said to us, how Andy was born on a Thursday and sadly passed away on a Thursday, and you couldn't even get yourself, out of bed. Like, how do people get through it?
So you get through it minute by minute, right? At the beginning. If I can make it through a minute, then I can make it through an hour. If I can make it through an hour, I can make it through a day. And then the days become weeks, and the weeks become months, and the months become years, right? And you just have to keep taking, for me, deep breaths and saying, okay, this is where I am, this is how it is, and this is the next step forward. And eventually, you start to move again. You don't move on, right? I'll never move on from Andy's loss, but I can move forward. And that's what we're doing. And, in our family, if you go to our house, our pictures of him are all over it. He's a part of our family still. My kids talk about him like he's here, and they're already excited because on his 12th birthday, we always do something. We have a party every year because it's Andy's birthday, and we celebrate the day that he was born. And we commemorate the day that we lost him because that's part of his story.
Right.
But that's really my best advice to anyone, is to take a breath and make it through the minute. And that's really all you can do, 1 minute at a time.
And you talked about walking forward, moving forward. There is a significant event coming up for SMA.
Yes.
And, it's all there. I want you to talk about the event, how we can get involved with the event. And it has to, all of this is in memory of sweet Andy and his smile.
So Cure SMA is a national organization, and every year they hold a walk and roll. Now, traditionally, it's here. And traditionally, well, at least for our chapter, it's here in the Tampa Bay area, and we generally have a few hundred people come out, and we raise $25,000 so on dollars for research and for awareness for SMA. This year, of course, with COVID, it's a little different, and certainly this is a population of children and adults who are very medically fragile. So having something in person is just not going to work. So Cure SMA on a national scale is holding their first ever nationally virtual walk, and it's happening on Saturday, November 14th. And we are Team Andy's Army.
Oh, love it.
So we've always, as long as we've been involved in the Cure SMA community, we've had our team, and we've been involved walking and now raising money, well, always raising money, and now virtually. We're thrilled that we are among some of the top teams in the nation already. So we're very excited about that. But if anybody wants to give, we do have a website that's curesma.org/go/Andy's Army 2020. And we'll put it in the article for this also.
Sure.
And you can also look up Cure SMA Andy's Army, and I'm sure find it that way too.
Well, we want to have the biggest army for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is the goal, to have the biggest army.
And you can register
involved.
for free. So it's not even, people don't have to give $1 if they don't want to. You can sign up to be part of Team Andy's Army. You can walk around your neighborhood on the day. You can just watch. Cure SMA is going to be doing a national televised event, and our family will be part of that as well. So you can see us doing that. But and I think that our team here is going to be doing a little something.
Absolutely, of course. Are you kidding? No, I am putting it on the record now. We want the largest. We want the largest group for Andy's Army. So please register. Please register. And Audra, I can't even thank you enough for sharing your story, and the fact that you have the strength to share it. And I know you've shared it with thousands of people. In fact, you were supposed to go to Australia.
I was very excited. There's an SMA organization in Australia that was having their first ever conference, and I was supposed to go last May to talk about grieving and finding hope. So unfortunately I couldn't, so hopefully they'll do it again when this COVID mess is over, and we'll be able to do that. But I generally also speak at the Cure SMA National Conference about the same thing. Because for me, letting people know that just like it was always about Andy's smile, that you as a parent who's gone through loss, that you can find your smile again too, right? You can find new reasons to hope and to move forward, and that whatever the experience that you had, you can take it and turn it into something that's positive. Because I feel like for him, his legacy is love. His legacy is lasting. And I want to make sure that that continues on, not just through the advocacy work that we do, not just through the newborn screening that's now in Florida everywhere, which was thrilling, but through his siblings and through the people around us that know and love him.
Well, I can tell you that your smile is infectious, and your smile makes my heart smile. So thank you again so much for sharing your story. And again, another push. We have to have the biggest team here. So thank you so much, everybody. Also, you can follow us on social media on all our platforms. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. And we know that Andy would be smiling right now.
I think he is.